From Rixie, this is Butter. I'm Nathan Rebus. The show about chefs and the impact food has had on their lives, their businesses, and the community. Today's conversation with Bo and Rebecca from SoBo Mobile. I decided to start this podcast with a couple I owe a lot to. They mentored me and helped me prepare for my start in the culinary world. That start was difficult, but without their guidance, I can only imagine how much more difficult it could have been. SoBo Mobile is a Mexican-inspired food truck operated by Bo Bryce and Rebecca Snyder. It's an interesting business because not only is it a food truck, but it is operated parallel to a farm that Rebecca owns. They raise their chickens and pigs and process them and serve it on the truck. They have their hands in every aspect of food production. And because of that, they have a profound understanding of the whole process of getting food to a customer. This is something most chefs are removed from, but they take pride in. Bo and Rebecca are beyond kind and supportive. Through the years that I've known and worked with them, we've never actually discussed how they got their start. So I sat down and had a drink with them and got the whole story.
Hey, I'm Rebecca Snyder from Junco Hill Farm in Warrenton.
Who am I today? Today, I am Bo Bryce from SoBo Mobile Mexican food truck.
All right, let's talk about how we know each other.
Do you really want people to know? We know Nate because Nate came to us when he was first starting out with the idea of a food truck. And he came to us for sage advice. That was his first mistake. No, you came to us and wanted to hang out with us and learn more about food trucks.
I did.
And so we said, join us, you crazy fool. And you got on the truck and sweated your ass off with us on a bunch of gigs.
Yes, I remember in particular a 4th of July gig where it was like 110. It was really miserable.
With mile-long lines.
Yes.
I remember that.
Well, I remember that lady coming and asking us, can you turn your lights off?
when the fireworks. I'm sorry, we have a fryer and a flat top and a grill going right now, so I'm afraid I cannot ask my staff to self-immolate. Perhaps later. Yeah, that was a good day.
While I had known and worked with Bo and Rebecca over the years, we never really discussed what had led them to running a food truck in the first place. So let's talk about both your upbringings and your relationship with food over the course of your upbringings. Did you guys have a close relationship with food when you were growing up at all?
Yeah.
I know Rebecca did.
I was born and raised on a farm in Canada. I didn't realize that it was odd to have your food come directly from your backyard. My dad had a massive garden. My mom was a canner and a dryer and all of that fabulous stuff and an amazing cook. And we had a cow-calf beef operation. So I grew up with a really, really close relationship to food. To me, food and home and my mom, it's all integrated.
This is reflective of the way Rebecca runs her business. I had been unaware of it, but had seen hints of it working with them over the course of the years.
But to be fair, when I was 17, I left the farm and I had a very impassioned 17-year-old asshole speech that talked about how I would never be a farmer, I would never shovel shit.
It's typical 17-year-old.
Yeah, it was embarrassing.
You suck. Everything sucks.
Yeah.
Everybody sucks.
Left the farm at
I'm
17.
out.
As cooks, I think everybody returns to what they were raised with.
You did, yep.
Just by nature. I don't know what it is, but everybody is called home.
Yep. That's absolutely what happened to me.
That's what happened to me. I mean, I grew up, and that's pretty much it. I actually haven't grown up yet.
Your mom was the ultimate Mexican mom.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, she made everything by hand, tortillas by hand, almost every morning for my father, who would go off and put fresh tortillas in his lunchbox and she would stay home and raise the kids and make dinner and make fantastic food, which we are making today.
How large was your family?
I'm the youngest of 6. She is the oldest girl of 11. So there are countless cousins and aunts and uncles, and we see each other weddings and funerals, and there's always food.
But you're being really modest because your mom also had a pivotal role in educating people about food and how to use food. I mean, she was more than just a stay-at-home mom doing 6 kids, which in and of itself is amazing. But she also had a job.
That's true. After I, as the youngest, I went to school, and she went back to school and got her bachelor's degree in economics. Not economics. It was home economics.
Yeah.
So she would go to the poorest neighborhoods and would teach them basically how to cook nutritious meals, and also how to use a lot of desert edibles, because being from Phoenix, Arizona, there are a lot of things that are just growing out in the desert that you can go and harvest and use in your food.
Pretty cool, right?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So your mom did a lot of community outreach.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. We didn't call it community outreach then. That's just mom. Doing mom stuff.
So you left home at 17.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you do any cooking when you left home, or were you adamantly, I'm not stepping foot in the kitchen?
No, I loved to eat, so therefore I learned to cook. I mean, I was spoiled rotten with amazing food that came fresh out of a garden and was grown literally in my backyard. So as I grew up, I realized I love food and I love feeding people. It's that horrible maternalistic instinct coming out. So yeah, I loved feeding people. Even when I was at university, we would have these ridiculous university parties where everybody would throw money into a pot and I would make food for people. It became a thing. And then as I went off to do my PhD, and I had a house, and everyone who was living there, we all took turns feeding each other and nurturing each other. That whole thing about food and nurturing and bringing people together.
But your mom didn't really teach you to cook,
No.
did she? I mean, you kind of learned from cookbooks.
Yeah. I'm a
From-
researcher.
What's the cookbooks that you would read?
Oh, Gourmet Magazine when I
Gourmet
was
Magazine.
12. Yeah. My mom got real sick, so my dad, who could boil water, said, hey, I tell you what, you can make anything in this magazine. I will buy the ingredients. I was like, sweet. I was 12. I learned very quickly you should always read the recipe first, figure out how long it takes, then make it, because we ate a lot at midnight until I kind of perfected my technique. When we met, we have both sort of gotten a little jaded because we were parents feeding children. And that changes your perspective on food, because kids are a rough audience.
They're the worst audience.
I wasn't going to say that, but
No, it's okay.
I notice that when I go to grocery stores, I see people that I knew ate well, and I see a kid in the cart, and I look at what's in their cart, and I'm like,
a shitload of crap.
that's a different avenue.
Yeah.
So, and
They wear you down, man.
that seems almost universal. Like
Yeah.
Welch's fruit snacks and like everybody's cart, fruit juice, and
Goldfish. I'm sorry.
These are things that you adamantly said you would not feed them,
But there's dinosaur pastas in your cart, and I saw it.
Yeah, kids will ruin you.
Yeah.
Love you guys.
Now, see, my mom taught me to cook because actually she taught all the kids to cook, but she taught me to cook, I think, because she thought I was unmarriable and would starve, maybe.
Aww.
I don't know. No, it was just important to her that you can feed yourself and that you know how to spend your money wisely, and again, get most of the value out of the food dollar that you're spending. So that was her take on it.
Now, did you cook much when you left home? You went into the military, or was that immediate for you?
That was not immediate. I bummed around, accidentally had a child somewhere in there, and so yeah, I would cook.
Okay. So how old were you when you went into the military?
23.
After their upbringing, food continued to grow and become a bigger part of their lives.
I was a poor student as when I got out of university. I was impoverished. I moved to Toronto. I was a waitress all the way through college, right? I mean, like everybody, I put myself through college by being a waitress. So I had a sort of front of house experience. When I got out of college, I ran a little catering gig out of my house, highly illegally. And that was my first introduction to sort of being in the kitchen and creating food for people and getting paid for it. And it was
Feeding people for
fabulous.
profit.
Feeding people for profit. Yeah, I had a really terrible degree in English and technical theater, so I wasn't about to make millions of dollars
She
that
was
way.
gonna starve.
So yeah, and I had all these friends who were out of work actors and actresses who were looking for side gigs. So it kind of worked out really nicely. It was called the Truffle Pig Catering Company.
So that was your first introduction to scale cooking, where you
Yeah.
went from home cook to cooking on a larger scale.
Yeah, that sweaty, panicky, holy shit, a lot of people are out there and we need to feed them kind of sensation was, yeah. I did that for about 3 years and then I went back to school because turns out that English and technical theater degree wasn't really going to get me where I needed to go.
How did the Truffle Pig do over the course of those 3 years?
We did really well with high-end dinner parties. That was my thing. I kind of got into this vibe where it was all of these moms who didn't want to cook for dinner parties, and so they would invite us into their kitchen and we would take over. I learned very quickly, always check the oven. Turns out none of these women actually used their oven. Very important. There were some, pivotal mistakes along the way, but it worked out really well for my friends and for myself. And that kind of introduced me to the concept, but then my career took a different path and I went off and became an archaeologist.
So did the Truffle Pig factor into your decision to start doing the food truck?
Factored into my decision to have her help me do the food truck because I had no experience other than cooking for my cousin's quinceañera back in Phoenix. And that was untold countless numbers of people, but they were all drunk. They didn't care what the food looked like. But because she had done that, when we met and we started talking about this concept of a food truck, I figured, okay, one of us has a little more experience. My experience at a restaurant was as a bartender. So,
So you guys had a drink.
at Apple, but I would hang out in the kitchen and I made friends with the kitchen staff because I appreciated how to cook and what to cook, and we all knew that it was Applebee's, so everybody knew we were cooking crap, and everybody wanted to cook other things than crap. So after the place closed, I would open up the bar and we'd start cooking some other things.
You probably would get fired for that now, wouldn't you?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, okay. So we won't tell that story.
Okay.
This never happened.
So 3 years of cooking experience is an infinite amount. I just had my 3-year anniversary is not until next week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not even at 3 years yet.
Yeah, but you're kicking it, man. You're kicking it.
Due to pure persistence, like absolute refusal to say, no, I'm done with this.
But that's one of the prime ingredients, right? You got to have persistence.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to take your failures and go, oh, shit. Okay, that was a failure, but we've learned from it. Let's move on.
This is the past 3 years.
Right? And then I think there's an element of being a food snob. It's not a popular idea, but I think knowing what you like to eat and really feeling strongly about what makes good food helps a lot. I mean, you have to care, right? And you care about what you're a total food snob, no offense, but you're a total food snob. I mean, you are always dissecting things and saying it needs a little sweet, it needs a little more sour. That's huge. If you have those components, I think that really helps you in the long run, which is why you've managed to get where you're going.
This is the point where Bo's food truck idea takes hold. He arrives in Washington, D.C. in 1988 and sees a hole in Mexican food that needs to be filled.
Cue the dramatic music. It was 1988. There I was, a soldier in Washington, D.C. I just finished basic training. In all my training, I had come to Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. I'm wandering around the mall, and I see the hot dog mafia and the pretzel the pretzel guys,
Pretzel princesses.
the pretzel, yeah. And I'm thinking what these people need is what I remember from years ago is a taco truck. And I was actually thinking of a taco cart. I grew up vacationing in Mexico, and we would go, and every time we'd go see the guy in the taco cart and get 2 or 3 amazing, delicious tacos of unknown meat, throw onions and some salsa, and that was it. And it cost pennies, and he was always busy. And I thought, this would be awesome to do. That was 1988. And when did we start our truck? 2005. Yeah, 2015, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, but the Army wasn't going to let me do a food truck. And then I had children to feed, and I didn't, you can't really go off on your own. So when I got fed up with the government and government contracting and the Army, I said, to hell with it all. Let's go do something fun. And
you met me.
And I met Rebecca.
That's fun.
Speaking of something fun.
It's the funnest.
It's the most fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's been in the back of my head forever, percolating. And every once in a while, I would jot down a few more notes. Here are the people that I need. Here's how. And it turns out that I was completely wrong on how to run a food truck in my brain. Reality set in, and I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. But the concept was there. And so I found myself with this desire to do a food truck, and met Rebecca, and she had
a farm.
A farm. Well, you didn't even have a farm. You had some
I had some land. Yeah.
That was completely not appropriate for farming.
No.
But I said we should put these two concepts together and come up with Farm to Face.
Farm to Face. What Bo touches on here is very important. This is a punk rock yet approachable take on farm to table. With a food truck, there is no table. You're literally taking it from the farm to the customer.
I had chickens.
You did have chickens.
The gateway livestock.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah. Once you get started on chickens, it's all downhill.
So what was the state of Mexican food in D.C. in 1988?
The state of Mexican food, Mr. Bo.
Oh, wow.
In some?
Malo is the Spanish word. Means bad. Yeah. I don't even think I had Mexican food. Well, there were a couple places. Actually, Anita's is New Mexican food, which is pretty good and pretty authentic, even though they do serve grilled cheese and French fries. And that was about it. I don't think that there was too much more going on in the Mexican scene.
How many times do you get people coming up to you and like, why is this Mexican food so expensive?
Oh, God. Well, let me count the ways people have asked, why is my Mexican food so expensive? But that feeds into the fact that we're on my farm, we create all the proteins for the food truck. So the way that Bo brought in his idea of the Mexican food truck, my idea was I had this shitty farm and I was trying to sell chickens, and I can sell you a $10 chicken, or I can sell you a burrito for $10 that takes 1/6 of a chicken.
So the business model is good.
Yeah.
It took a little massaging and getting Rebecca to understand the concept of the business model about why she should have the farm and the food truck, why the farmer should be the chef as well, essentially. I mean, it sounds good on the surface until you're up at 6 o'clock in the morning feeding pigs that you're going to serve later on for burritos, but it is a great business model. And it's really one of the only ways the farmers are going to make a living wage.
So let's talk about the search and purchase of your food truck.
Yeah, some of it was luck. We went up to Pennsylvania. It was finding the truck was sort of a weird Men in Black moment.
Before we looked at a lot of trucks, though. We looked
did.
at a lot of used trucks,
Yep.
people selling used food trucks, and we decided that wasn't the way to go because they were dodgy.
They were dodgy.
People were not taking care of their.
You can relate, Nate. We found a truck in Pennsylvania. We carried a large briefcase of cash with us because that wasn't dodgy. We had to meet the guy in his backyard and hand over cash, no checks. And
I took my son Ben with
we
me.
took Ben, great big Ben.
I took Ben 6'7" and 350 pounds, and made him carry
the briefcase,
the football. He was loving it.
It was so
He's
dodgy.
like, I'm finally the heavy.
And then you brought it back from Pennsylvania in that horrible windstorm, and we designed the interior.
And the design of the food truck was not haphazard. We literally taped the dimensions out on the floor and pretended to serve food, and figured out how much space do we need? How is this going to flow? She's a professional researcher.
I am.
The McDonald's move.
I researched the shit out
Yeah.
of it.
Did you watch that movie?
No.
I forget what it's called.
What's the movie?
The Founder with Michael Keaton. They literally go outside on a blacktop and trace out where all the appliances are going to be. They had all their employees here, and they had to go through it, and they redesigned it 4 times.
Well, shit, I just thought I was being brilliant.
We did that. That was awesome.
To be fair, that was a brilliant move. That was the thing that made
We mocked
McDonald's
it up.
McDonald's.
Yeah, we mocked it up
Yeah.
over and over again and decided, we can't put the refrigerator here and the stove can't fit over here. And
We'll be
how am I
going
gonna reach?
back and forth.
Yeah.
And back, yeah.
So we mocked it up until we thought we had something pretty decent. And it's held up. I mean, there's a couple of modifications I think we would like to make to our truck, but it's held up.
It has. It's definitely one of the nicer ones I've stepped foot in.
It's thank you. It's reasonably easy to work in.
So you bought a sketchy food truck, and then do you take it to the customs place? That was
We did.
okay.
Yeah, and actually, it wasn't a food truck. It was a
Carpenters.
carpenters or electricians. It was a shell. It was an empty shell, and that's really the way I would want to start any food truck.
Yep.
Yeah, because then you can
Design
customize
what you
it
want,
and design it
the way
and
you want.
get it right.
Right. And for the food that you're preparing, because I think the other trucks that we had looked at, there were a lot of trucks that just weren't going to accommodate what we felt was going to be our menu. Of course, that changed over time. You can relate to that. But we kind of thought, this is what we want to make. This is the layout we have to make it happen. So starting from scratch with an empty husk was pivotal. And worked. Worked well for us.
Yeah, still running. The design phase was interesting too.
I
It was
loved it.
very interesting. We were bouncing back and forth some initial designs, and then met a designer, and we sat down and we all agreed, okay, no dancing peppers, chili peppers,
Nothing with a sombrero on its head.
nothing with a sombrero. All right, we're gonna make it look good, and choosing a professional and a professional company to make that happen is what took us over the top in terms of the design of the truck. The truck looks good. When people come up to the truck, we've gotten a lot of kudos.
A lot of people have come up and said, I do design for a living. This is a great design. This is memorable. Or they'll say, oh, I've seen your sugar skull before, man. I know. It's like, cool. It's a for real legit thing. I mean, we really did want to integrate the sugar skull because of this respect that we have for our respective pasts. His mom's recipes informed everything that we make on the truck. My mom and dad's farming and the way that they chose to raise this rebellious little shit of a child is reflected in our success with the truck. I mean, it's about who came before us. So,
Which is the sugar skull and the Day of the Dead. And
right, is legitimately honoring. I mean, I think a lot of people throw around the sugar skull design because it's visually appealing, but there is a lot of intrinsic meaning in that, and a respect for the past and a respect for the people who came before you. And we really did honestly believe that that was a cool part of what we were trying to say. So
before the movie Coco came out.
yeah. Coco. But I mean, it legitimately talks about that kind of thing, right? How important the people before us were in informing who we are and our abilities and our success now.
They've got the farm, they've got the truck, they've got the concept. It's time for a soft opening. This can be an anxiety-inducing process. You've worked so hard to come up with an idea, and now you're having to present it to people, and the feedback process can be daunting.
We had some soft openings. I think that's the term. We had some soft openings.
They're like wilting openings.
We basically invited a bunch of people to the farm to come, and we would feed them out of the food truck.
Friends and family.
Oh, God.
Do not invite friends and family if you want
Biggest mistake.
real feedback. Because everyone's going to say, this is
fine,
delicious.
sweetheart. We really
Wow.
love what you're making.
You're so proud of you. You guys are doing great.
Which was nice, but we really needed some constructive criticism. Like, there's too much fucking salt in this, and that's dry as a bone, and who the hell ever eats that? No. We needed that, but people wanted to be kind.
Which is why we brought in a chef
Right.
who was neither friendly nor
kind.
familiar.
But that's good.
Yeah, no, it was very good.
Who'd you bring in?
Emner Reyes.
Emner.
Emner has been working in the food world for years and years. Is he from Honduras? Is he from, yeah. And was working in New York, and I met him through another job that I did. He started a couple restaurants. He's worked in many restaurants, and I like his ethos. I like his approach to food, and I trusted his opinion. So we brought him in, and he gave us advice from everything from marinades to service.
He stood in the truck while we were serving people and sweating our balls off, and basically stood behind us and watched our every move. You ever feel nervous?
It's an excellent consultant.
Yeah, he just stood there and he watched us for a couple of hours. And I just felt anxious and anxiety ridden the entire time because I figured we were doing everything wrong. But then he didn't, he cut to the chase. He's like, here's what you did wrong. And this isn't working.
Try this.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, oh, thank God.
So how much of his DNA is left in what SoBo is now?
I think he gave us enough of a kick in the pants to push us to understand where we wanted to go. Again, going back to the food snob concept, I knew how I wanted it to taste. I feel much more sure of myself now. But at the time, it was a very overwhelming experience.
Well, plus we're going from feeding our families to feeding hundreds of people, and these recipes you don't necessarily know how to scale a recipe from 5 to 500.
Oh, and we're doing it in a space the size of your bathroom.
Now, you recommended to me when I was getting started a lab down in Virginia Tech for scaling.
Yeah.
Did you guys use them at all in your process?
We never ended up using them. We ended up kind of let me tell you about all the mistakes we've made. I mean, we made
That's its own podcast.
So many mistakes.
Food mistakes we've made.
Food mistakes we've made. I could go on for hours. We've done everything wrong. We've screwed up a lot of stuff. My pigs have eaten very, very well on an occasion or two or three.
Rebecca talks about mistakes, but what she doesn't talk about is the careful planning that goes into all of their projects. Nothing is done by accident here. This has led to a longevity and success that a lot of other food trucks have not been able to replicate.
We kind of learned from those mistakes. I think one of the things that you and I have talked about is what's your crystal ball in terms of volumes of food? How much food are we going to sell today?
It's not a crystal ball. It's like a magic 8-ball.
Yeah.
No, it's roulette.
It's right. I mean, you've been there. You just never know. Is today going to be the day that we have 250 people show up? Or is there going to be some weird misalignment of the planets and we're going to have 5 people show up? And then my pigs will eat really well tonight.
Yeah, that was a really frustrating thing for Buns on the Run and us because I'd got to the point where I would prepare half the amount of food that I was recommended to prepare.
Right.
And sometimes I would even sell half of that.
Right.
And then other times I'd sell out halfway through the gig. And people come up to me and they're like, why the fuck don't you have more food?
So
And I'd be like,
angry.
you do not understand how unreliable the information you gave me is.
Right.
Unless you have pre-ticket sales,
Right.
you have nothing for me. Minimums are something that food trucks have to apply these days. There's this thing called the 3-day restaurant rule. You have 3 days worth of food. So if you have a particularly busy day, you can go into the next day's supplies. You can't do that with a food truck. With limited capacity and the planning that has to go into each event, a minimum is required in order to ensure profitability. What's your response been to that? Because I got sneered at aggressively.
I think that it is becoming more common. And I think the majority of people now, 5 years down the road after doing this, people now don't even hesitate. They're like, okay. We've actually had people who are like, we're not going to use $800 worth of food, but we will pay you $800 so you can come out and do our gig.
All right, so you did your test runs and
Did our test runs, refined our technique, and then our opening night.
We had it nailed. The test runs indicated what we needed to fix. We had the recipes down.
You were so full of shit.
Coming down. Coming down,
full of
grand opening night, we frickin' nailed it for the first 30 to 45 minutes, I would say.
Yeah,
we
the
were
first
gonna-
half hour out, we were
Then
kicking
the
it.
wheels fell off that train, and
We were at Old Busthead.
we were at Old
Our
Busted
opening night was at Old Busthead Brewery.
in,
They were kind enough to believe in us and
in
give
beautiful
us go.
Fauquier County.
And
Eat here, drink
again, our
here.
friends were trying to be supportive, and so they all showed up and ordered food. And their friends all showed up and ordered food. And it was bad. We ran out of food within, the first 2 hours? We literally ran out of food. We were supposed to be there for 6 hours. We ran out of food around hour 2. We were sweaty, pitted, weeping, wetting ourselves on the truck. It was not pretty.
what was your take on that?
Maybe it's not too late to sell the truck and move to Miami.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, financially, like you sold out of food at $200, like in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Were you aware of how much money food-wise you had on your truck at that point?
No,
No, we had
completely
no
fucked it
clue.
up. We were taking a wild guess. We were like, there should be enough
We
food.
didn't think anybody would
Show up.
really show up. It was like a Thursday,
Yeah. It was terrible.
and we didn't think anyone would show up.
And it was embarrassing and humiliating. And I couldn't look anybody in the eye because I was like, I'm sorry, we don't have any food for you.
But everybody was really supportive.
They were.
Everyone was very supportive, and they clapped when we fell out of the truck because it was so hot.
Sweaty and dying.
You literally got applause when you got out of the truck.
Oh, yeah. People
Yeah.
were like, yay, you guys are awesome. And I'm like, I love my friends. They're so sweet.
And now, 5 years later, that would be an easy night.
But we have, as the years have gone by, and you know this, you get used to the crazy. You get used to the adrenaline. You get used to the fact that he is telling me how many people are in the line. And I'm like, keep cooking, boys. We're in the weeds. That used to cause me profound anxiety. Now it's like, put your head down and let's get it done. Go.
So, fell on your face is the first one.
Fell on our faces, clawed our way through. Did you ever have, when you first started your truck, those recurring nightmares? It's kind of like, when you're in your classroom and you're naked, at school, but it's sort of, I'm on the truck and there's 5,000 angry people out there with pitchforks and like flames and they want their food. I had nightmares like that for the first year of the truck. I mean, disturbing nightmares.
I didn't run my truck very well for the first year. I just thought I was an absolute badass for opening a food truck. So I did my first gig, and I took all of December off after that. I'm pretty sure that my parents stood over my bed with a knife while I was
They were the
sleeping.
ones with the pitchfork.
Yeah.
There you go.
Am I dreaming? No, it's my parents.
But once we started getting into things, I think Bald Top down in Madison was the first time where I was like, whoa, because we got backed up for 2 hours on burgers. My burger cook was not that good. I was not confident enough to be on the griddle at that point, and we got a ton of negative Facebook reviews. And
Ugh.
people were backed up 2 hours, and I'm like, we're new at this. I don't know what to do. But I had to reconfigure the truck after that event.
It's a learning process. You learn every single time. There's something better you could be doing. There's something that's out of place.
And there's only so much you can do. If people are going to stand in line for 45 minutes and then be upset because it took them 45 minutes just to get to the order window. I mean, what do you do? It tears me up sometimes.
We still have an ongoing discussion about would people rather stand in line? Would you rather wait to order your food or wait to get your food once you've ordered it?
The 50-50 mix is where I want on that. Like, make me wait if the wait is long. So like, there's an indisputable hour wait, right?
Right.
Make me stand in line for half an hour. Make me wait half an hour for my food. Split it up, because anticipation after ordering food is greater than.
I think anticipation and aggravation
Yeah.
is greater after you've ordered your food.
Now, see, I usually work at the window. He's usually cooking.
Yeah.
So I get to deal with some pretty upset people.
So-
and it's really hard
But
to
it-
keep your cool.
But it takes us time.
Right.
We will not cut corners on
Right.
the food because everything is made fresh.
And it's made to order,
And
right?
we don't have 20 burritos sitting around. And I refuse to have 20 burritos sitting around.
Right.
We have to make it fresh. It's got to take time.
Yeah, so there's a lot of tension in that in terms of the conversation that we have in terms of how do we make this work? So how do we get you your food? How do we get you happy and in your belly and smile on your face, but also create something that looks beautiful and tastes fantastic and is custom made? I mean, you're telling me exactly what you want on this. This isn't something I'm making ahead of time that's sitting there for an hour under a heat lamp. It's made to order for you.
And it's got to look good. That's the thing. If you've waited any amount of time for your food, when you get it, you want to look at it and be like, wow.
Yeah.
And as you're walking through the crowd, we know we've done a good job. If nachos go out the truck and 5 more orders come in because it looks good.
We call it the nacho effect.
Yeah. So
Legit.
you're definitely playing a psychological game at that point, because when I'm in line, I have something that I haven't given you yet, and that is all the possibilities going through my head.
Right.
So that's a level of control. When I've ordered, I've lost all control. That is on you now. So splitting it up that way, I think.
It's really hard though, isn't it?
Yeah.
To get that timing just right has been a challenge, and it's something that Bo and I are constantly arguing about how to make that
Discussing
in a friendly manner.
vigorously.
Rebecca's focus on visuals is another part of her considered approach to food. Contrasting colors and vibrant flavors bring people back time and time again.
There is a huge psychology of food, obviously, and the waiting and the getting and the how it looks visually. I mean, I'm hung up on visuals, and so it has to look.
And I
pretty.
am not. And
I'm not either.
Rebecca makes our truck a better truck because if you remember earlier on, I was talking about the little old Mexican guy in the taco cart, and he's slinging tacos, and they don't look great, but you know they're going to be great, and they taste fantastic. But she brings this ethos and this what's the word I'm grasping for? Je ne sais quoi about the food, right? That ups it and makes it, and really makes it what it is. I mean, it's good food to start, but it looks good and it presents well.
And that's something awesome that you guys have. It's something that I haven't experienced. I don't have a contemporary in my personal business. I don't have somebody I can bounce ideas off. The closest thing I have is my dad, but he's not deeply involved enough to get technical on it. He's really just a customer that I can talk to all the time.
But I'm a terrible food snob. I have a problem. When we go to eat, we immediately dissect everything we eat everywhere we go. That's a problem. That becomes a psychological issue.
Yeah,
It's
you have to
actually a
remove
lot of
yourself.
fun.
Yeah.
I try to kind of reconcile, this is what I paid, this is what I expect for that price.
Right.
So I get steak and eggs at a diner, and it's an undeep fried country fried steak. But I paid $7 for it.
Yeah, so
I'm happy when I get
I'm gonna
that.
eat it.
Yeah, I'm happy when I get it, because I'm like, I paid $7 for a steak. That looks like a $7 steak.
Legit.
It's also 2:00 in the morning and I'm drunk.
Well, and something we talked about before, we're not chefs, right? We're just cooks, man. And so, I mean, given what we have to work with, we try really hard to meet that standard. I wish I could go off to school and take 4 years and do nothing but learn how to cook.
I do not.
See, I would love to be able to have the chemistry skills and all of that knowledge. I'd like to know how the chemistry of it works, because once you know the chemistry, you can do anything. And I don't have that, so we kind of make it up as we go along. Let me tell you about the number of churros I've fucked up in my lifetime to find the right churro recipe. If I had-
Lifetime being 5 years.
yeah,
How
it
many
seems like a lifetime
How
of
many churros did you make
churros.
5 years ago?
Pigs are
Yeah.
fat and happy. But if I'd had that knowledge, if I had been truly a chef, I just, can you imagine what you would create?
I definitely, personally, I feel like a food nerd that gets to pay his rent with his hobby.
Yeah.
That's,
I get to cook.
Yeah,
I get to feed people, and that makes me happy.
that's really what it comes
And
down
yeah,
to.
and that's not a bad thing. It's a
And
beautiful thing.
I get to the point where I think about it, and I don't know that I would understand my life without cooking in it.
That's valid. I get it. We also have ego, though, right? I mean, how good does it feel to feed somebody and be told it's fabulous? All cooks, all chefs have ego. That little thing that you got to admit, it feels really good when somebody says, oh my God, that was off the hook. That was spectacular. Yeah, that feeds that nasty little ego thing in a nice way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It is cool, and I remember experiencing this early on when I step out of the truck and I walk through the crowd and I see 50 people eating the food that we've
That
just
we made.
created,
Yeah.
and they're busy eating and they're happy and they're talking. That does feed the ego. You're right.
Oh, it feels so bad, but it feels so good.
I mean, even without anybody saying anything to me, it makes me feel good that I have just fed all these people.
Yeah.
And everybody's happy.
So you did your first few. When did you start feeling like you were hitting your stride? Was there a point in which that happened? Or was
Stride
it-
is next
Last
year.
week.
Next year. We're going to hit our stride.
Yeah. There's always, I mean, in some ways, I guess that's why we keep coming back for more. There's always times when we think we could do something better. I don't think there's ever been a time when we've
No, but
rested
I guess
on our
this question
laurels.
is about when did we start to feel comfortable on the truck? And I would say 6 months in,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. We started to get the hang of it, sort of. Honestly, we were in the process of building our commissary kitchen. We had not had a commissary kitchen up until that point. We didn't start with a magnificent kitchen that we could count on. And that was a problem. We needed more space. So once we got the commissary kitchen going, which is the upstairs of my barn, weirdly, that really helped us to find our groove, because suddenly we had space. Suddenly we could,
Had professional equipment.
right.
We could everything we needed. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a dedicated area to create the food, and that really alleviated a lot of stress.
To date, that's the nicest kitchen I've worked in.
Oh, thanks. Again, that was a kitchen that we laid out and mocked up and worked really hard to try and make everything portable. Everything's on wheels, all of the tables, everything, so that we can move around and change the space to suit what we're trying to do on any given event.
So you might get the sense that nothing happens on accident with us. It's all
I like to research.
very well thought out, very well measured, and before we pull the trigger on anything, we try to nail it.
Ethics and food go hand in hand, or at least they should. SoBo's ethical motivations have created a sustainable food model that other people should look to.
It's interesting that you grew up on a farm that is completely different than the farm that you own.
That's true. So, a bit more background history. So, I was born and raised on a cow-calf operation in Canada.
Which
My-
is what?
My dad did large-scale farming of beef cattle, so we created meat on the hoof, in short. We had a sort of Hereford, Charolais, Piedmontese mix of cattle, and we created beef. That was our thing. My
For
father...
mass consumption.
For mass consumption,
Yep.
yeah. My father was diagnosed with lymphoma and ultimately died of lymphoma. And I think that a lot of conversations that we had about why he had cancer when he ate so very well. He was a very healthy man. He was always very fit. And I think it goes back to in the 1960s and the 1970s, we were very interested in chemicals and how chemicals would change our world. DDT was popular. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. I mean, if you read that book, that was what was going on. And we bought into this idea that if we sprayed the land and we used all of these chemicals, we would make a better world.
There's better living through chemistry.
Better living through chemistry. We believed that. And I remember being 6 and 7 years old, and my dad would drop my brother and I down into the tanks, the spray tanks, to wash them out with a hose.
Because that's perfectly safe.
Yeah, after they'd finished spraying the fields for pests, for fertilizer, didn't matter. We'd be let down into the tanks because we could get into the little holes and clean out the tanks. So, based on that information and the fact that I'm a pot-smoking hippie from way back, I kind of knew that if I was going to farm, it was going to have to be a different framework that I was going to work with. And it was really important to me also that I looked at how I was going to treat life. I really feel strongly that if I am going to take life, if I am going to kill chickens, which I'm doing tomorrow. Come on down, Nate. If we're going to create this beef and this pork, if we're going to take that life, what can we do to, and I know this sounds really hippie and obnoxious, but what can we do to make that life valued? What can we do to make those animals as happy as we can, given the circumstance? I like to eat meat. I really enjoy a good cheeseburger, and I like roast chicken. If I'm going to morally stand up and say, yeah, I'm going to take this life and I'm going to eat it, can I at least put into that something kind and something open-hearted? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So with the farm, I think we've always tried really hard to make sure that our animals are well cared for. And I don't buy into this organic phrase. I want you, as the person who's coming to eat my pork burrito, to understand that if my pigs are unwell, trust me to know that I can call my vet and I'm going to use antibiotics. I'm going to do something to help.
If there were more people in the industry, like Bo and Rebecca, the industry would be a better place. It's as simple as that. I look forward to seeing what they build, and I'm happy I got to be a part of it. Butter is a production of Rixie. Produced, edited, and mixed by myself, Tanner, and Mason Carlton. Special thanks to my parents for being supportive of me through this whole process. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review and rate the show. It really helps out.